Hey guys, today I want to talk about when expats get nasty. You know, three years ago, somebody told me this story. It was kind of a nasty story, actually. A guy had this expat living next to him. He was an expat, obviously. I think the guy next door was from the UK or something. It really doesn't matter where he was from. But anyway, he had a pool next door. And he put out these huge speakers outside. Every morning at 6 a.m., he'd get up, put on his favorite Metallica song or whatever it was. Who knows what it was. But he played it really, really loud. So he couldn't sleep. Half the neighborhood couldn't sleep. At 6 a.m., the music went on. And by 10 a.m., he already had a bunch of people over there drinking, hanging out, partying and stuff all day long. Sometimes till midnight, I guess. Sometimes the music would play till midnight, even though they weren't supposed to have it on past 10 o'clock or whatever, I guess, in that particular barangay. But the guy got kind of ticked off one day, walked over, knocked on the guy's door, and asked him, he says, hey, can I ask you a favor? He says, I live next door. I like to sleep a little bit late. Could you turn the music on a little bit later in the morning? Maybe like 8 or 10 or something like that if you could. He said, I like to sleep late in the morning. The guy slammed the door in his face. That was the end of that, and at that point he didn't really know what to do. So he decided to take the law into his own hands, I guess. And within 6 months, he went out and got 4 pigs. He built a piggery right next to the fence where the guy had his pool, just to piss him off. And that would piss me off too, I would imagine, if you're in your pool and you have to smell pig crap all the time. But that's what he did. And it kind of escalated from there on. What happened from there on is not a good story. The guy started shoveling stuff into the other guy's yard. The more he played the music in the middle of the night, he was shoveling some of the pig manure over into his yard, even into his pool. And the guy came over and they got in a fight. Now, I heard this story 3 years ago, so I don't know if I got all the facts straight, but it goes something like this. But what happened after that was they got in a real big fight, a physical fight. And somebody got hurt pretty bad. And I guess the guy had to go to the hospital. And I believe it was the guy that had the pool was the one that got hurt the most, because the other guy just lost it. He lost it on that guy and went all off on him and hurt him really bad. Now, I've heard this story about 2 or 3 times. I think it happened somewhere near Mindanao, one of the southern islands. But when it happened, I always wondered, why couldn't people just be friendly and move along or kind of work with each other a little bit and say, hey, Joe, yeah, sure, I'll shut it off till 10 o'clock. Or how about we meet in the middle, 8 o'clock, okay? And then I'll try to quiet it down a little bit with it during the day, if that's okay, so you can, because the guy wanted to have peace around his house. He liked to sit out on his deck. He felt like he was at a constant party at his house. And it really bothered him. But look where it went, because of the fact that 2 people couldn't deal with each other. They couldn't negotiate. They couldn't be friendly with each other. And sometimes, as in this case, you're going to run into people like that here in the Philippines. I've run into them. You're going to run into them. I've run into them when I first got here. I run into them, every year you run into somebody. You never know who it's going to be, and some people are just plain vindictive. And they in this case, I think both of them were a little bit at fault. The guy put a piggery near the guy's pool. Guy's not going to work with him now, is he? At all. And the fact that the guy slammed the door on him, that didn't help anything either, did it? So in this case, I'd say they're both 50-50 at fault. And granted, one guy started it, but the other guy escalated it and kept it going and made it go further. And here's my solution to this. If you run into one of those people, walk away. Walk on. Give them what they want. If you have to get up and move. Just move on. You're going to run into people like that. And you know what? There's no winning for anybody in that case. This case here, they both lost. I don't know what happened to either one of them after that because I never heard the rest of the story. I just heard that part. But when you run into people like that, it's best to move on if you can. Sometimes when you try to move on, they still try to bother you. They still try to harass you or whatever. I've heard of those stories a lot of times. It's happened to me a couple of times. It can happen to you. You know, I remember a couple of years ago, I had somebody like that. And I remember when I first got here, I met somebody like that. There's just, people like to really harass you, you know. They don't like to stop. They can't leave well enough alone. And that's when you got to make leave well enough alone and just get away, get away from it. It's the best thing you can do. You know, in this world today, it's not worth living like that. And it's not worth having those hassles. We have our problems here in the Philippines. Yes, we do. You know, and those are some of the problems we have. And sometimes they're with expats. Sometimes they're with Filipinos, and that can be hard too. But most of the time, I find over here, it's more peaceful over here than it is back home. Those problems, they're like that. Don't let them bother you. Move on. If it means moving to a different place, that's why I say rent, don't own. Because you know what? You can always get up and go. You can get up and go wherever you want. You have that freedom to move. That way there, somebody's bothering you, click. Okay, I'm moving. I'm going someplace else. You can do that. I'm fortunate that I don't have to, and I have no plans on doing that. So if you have a problem over here and you run into issues like that, don't instigate it. Don't build it. Don't make it worse. Don't think the American way or the Western way. Be humble. Be the bigger guy. Be the guy that walks away from that. Or take care of it. Maybe you go to the barangay or whatever. You could do things that way too. That's another way to resolve things over here. Is to mediate it. Sometimes that doesn't do it. Sometimes you just gotta say, I'm gonna section myself off from that. I'm done. And that's the way to do things sometimes. I've had to do that. And when I heard this story though about this guy, I was thinking, I says, that's very typical of Westerners. It's very typical of a lot of the 10% of the expats over here, the ones that people have problems with. It's typical. I think in this case here, both those guys were the 10%. Both of them were. Because one of them escalated it. The other one started it. So who was the instigator? And who, both of them kind of were. One guy instigated with putting pigs next to the pool. The other guy instigated with the music. They both kind of asked for their problems, and they both got it, unfortunately, and it ended up in a bad way. I wish I had the rest of the story to tell you. Maybe somebody here can fill me in with what happened, because it happened about 3 years ago, and I've read the story a couple times, and I've heard people talking about it several times. It was about 3 or 4 years ago when I first got over here. I'd love to know the rest of the story to see if even those guys are still in country. Because I got a feeling like maybe one of them got kicked out. I'm not sure. Or maybe both of them did for what happened. Because of the fight that ensued. But anyway, guys, I want to put that out there. Beware. Don't get trapped into these issues that other expats will kind of suck you into sometimes over here. Stay away from them. Just stay away from them. Just move on. Just keep on moving. And then eventually it'll just go away. You don't have to stick around and fight somebody like that all the time. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do need to call them on the carpet or whatever. If you just see that you're not getting any place, just move on. It's simple. Anyway, guys, I wanted to throw that out there. I thought it was a great story for today, for this particular month, because I've heard a couple of stories from other friends of mine and stuff like that down south, down in Bacol actually, and they're having similar problems. So I want to kind of put that out there. And we all go through that. I've gone through it. I've gone through it recently. Other people have gone through it here. And sometimes you just got to step up to the plate and say, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm going to step away. I'm going to be the bigger man. I'm done. God bless, guys. Take care.